Welcome to More Than a Few Words, a marketing conversation for business owners. This is your host, Lorraine Ball. You know that I love a good story. And it's not just that I think it's a great way to convey information. Stories can have impact. They can really engage your community. And today we're going to talk a lot about stories. And to have this conversation, I've invited Shaté Hayes to join me. She is a creative strategist and a storyteller. She's on a mission to help professionals everywhere feel a sense of purpose and pride in their careers. She's spent more than a decade in her career as a professional dance and choreographer, watching stories come to life in powerful theater productions. And now she's helping business owners and professionals create compelling stories for impact-driven leaders and organizations. Her unique blend of artistic flair and strategic thinking turns meaningful outcomes into captivating content that resonates. Shaté, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Lorraine, for that amazing introduction.
What a really interesting background, from dancer to writer.
Yes, and it was definitely unexpected. So I came here dancing. I started dancing at a very young age, maybe 3 or 4, and it just stuck. You know, it was something that was always fun. I continued to grow and evolve and get better at it, and had this dance career that I loved. I adored it. I did so many really incredible things, from performing all over and choreographing theater productions, which I love, and then getting a master's in dance and becoming a dance educator. And there was this time in that sort of towards the end of it, after or during grad school, where sort of the undergrads would learn of my career and want to know more. And I would start telling them about, all the things I wish I had known when I started. And that's kind of where the writing started. I started blogging, and it became a thing of its own. So I've been really fortunate to use everything in all parts of my career and each phase of it.
That's such a wonderful thing, to be able to find the things that you were good at and find new applications for them.
Exactly.
I'm a teacher at my core. My undergrad was elementary education. And so like you, a lot of it is about the teaching, and it's fun to see it come through in different ways. But I want to switch gears because I really want to talk about stories. And I know that you do a lot with impact stories. Tell me first what that is, and then also let's talk about how business owners can use some of those story techniques.
Absolutely. So an impact story is traditionally in the nonprofit space where, you're getting some sort of funding for the programming and things that you're doing, and you've got to sort of give an update on how that money was used and what impact you're doing in the world. And so you tell the story of that, what the numbers are, what the data looks like, how lives were changed with the work that you're doing. I think it's an incredibly smart and just meaningful piece of content to share, not just with funders or donors, but just with your community, whoever you're supporting, to say, hey, this is the mark that we're making in the world. And so although we primarily hear it in the nonprofit space, I think businesses everywhere could use it. I think they're really useful in pitch decks. If you're like pitching investors or just some other type of competition, I think just knowing what your impact is and being able to tell the story of it in a really meaningful way can go just such a long way.
Absolutely. So I want to create stories. I want to kind of create that language, that content. What's the first thing I need to think about as I'm trying to build these stories?
I would say the first thing you want to do is collect them, right? So collect all of the information that you need to tell the story. I like to sort of liken it to a puzzle. Like first you have to get all of the pieces out on the table. You got to flip it over and see what's there. And when it comes to collecting, I would say collect things like data, like how many folks did you support? What was the transformation with those folks? Like whatever the important data is for you and for your people, collect all of that information. Maybe even collect the permissions to tell some parts of those stories if you have testimonials and things of that nature. So the very first thing is just like get it all on the table, see what you have, and then start thinking about what story you want to tell from that information.
Okay, so I have all these stories. I've got some testimonials, maybe a little bit of a case study, a
Yeah.
photograph of a happy customer. It's all
Mhm.
it's all on my table, but some of it's like falling off the edge of the table because there's just so much, right?
Yes.
So now I got to figure out what of this is going to really make a good story. What should I look for in that pile of information
Mhm.
I've collected?
It really goes back to your unique business, your unique goals, and your North Star, because the story you want to tell has to bridge to that ultimate impact that you're trying to make in the world. I really, really love Kendra Hall's book, Stories That Stick, and how she talks about like your personal stories being the bridge to the people that you're trying to reach. And so that is a very personal question that you have to answer. So if my North Star is to help, more creatives to make a dent into that creative economy and more of us are working independently and earning 100K, then whatever I collect and gather has got to bridge to that specific story. So it really depends on your unique business and then what you're trying to accomplish.
All right, so I've kind of picked a couple of great pieces. I think I've got a really nice beginning. As I'm thinking about creating content,
Mm-hmm.
because stories now live in all sorts of forms. Maybe some tips on written stories, picture stories, video stories. What works well where? Because it's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the first thing I would say is you don't have to be everywhere. I think a lot of business owners are like, let me be on every single platform so that I have a presence everywhere. And then we feel overwhelmed because they're like, oh, I got to do another reel. I got to do another thing. And so I would say first prioritize the platforms where your people primarily are. Like wherever it makes the most sense for you to be doing business, prioritize those. It doesn't mean you don't have to have a presence on the other places, but maybe like just focus more energy there. And then we know the algorithms are always changing. We know like there's always something to stay on top of, but each platform really does have like a mode of content that works best. And so maybe you want to prioritize like your video content on an Instagram or a TikTok, right? LinkedIn, I think, is really great for images and just for written text. If you're on X, you only have a certain number of characters, right? So it really, like wherever you're prioritizing your marketing and your efforts and your engagement with your community, that's how you want to like tailor the content for the platform.
Cool. As I'm pulling my stories together, are there other things I should kind of be looking for? Are there tricks to collecting some of this, kind of getting people to help me tell my story?
I think I love this question so much, Lorraine, because I think so many people think they don't have a story to tell. Like, if there's not some sensational thing like homelessness or working with a celebrity or just some really, really like not the norm type of experience, then they feel like, oh, that's a story that shouldn't be told. But really, the smallest things that we experience in our life are lived experience. There is something that will capture and connect with another human being. And so I think all of those stories are worth telling. And so I think it's important to just, they're going back to that book, collecting your stories, mining your stories, write all of them down. So literally on a spreadsheet, all of the small, simple stories, like in my dance career when I first started blogging, I was telling every story, like how I told my parents I wanted to be a dancer and they didn't agree and I was crying and it was awful, or how I bombed my first audition, or how I, like just any of these really, really small things because someone else has had an experience like those. And so it doesn't just have to be the testimonial, the really huge impact. We helped 1 million people. It could be the smallest, like, hey, I connected with this person. This is what happened. And it just impacted me so much. I had to share it this way, so it doesn't have to be huge. It can be a really small human moment that is definitely worth sharing too.
I love I love that idea of the human moments. I was a president of an organization for a number of years, and my job at every meeting was always to close the meeting. And I
Mm-hmm.
always tried to have a story that would tie to what the meeting had been about. And you're right, I went through life looking for those stories, and
Yeah.
it's a fun way to view the world.
And for other people to get to know more about you,
Mhm.
right? Like maybe I'm sharing with my community today how I spent the weekend with my grandmother and what reflections I got from that. Or, like they learn more about you, they feel more connected to you, and it really does help move your cause forward too.
Awesome. Well, I really want to thank you for spending a little time with me today. I think this was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Lorraine. It's been such a pleasure.
It has been so much fun. And I'm going to encourage you guys, if you are interested, you really want to check out careersteward.co. C-O, not C-O-M, careersteward.co. There will be links in the show notes, also links to Instagram and LinkedIn. Thank you, Shaté, again for being a part of the show. If you've enjoyed this conversation and want to find other resources for your business, hop over to morethanafewwords.com. You'll find workbooks, white papers, webinars, and hundreds of conversations in our archive. This has been another episode of More Than a Few Words. Thanks for listening.